I thought Nathan, my 19-year-old cousin, was just being annoying at our parents' anniversary, but he crossed the line. Using guilt and lies, he manipulated everyone into doubting each other, turning a happy celebration into chaos. Unbelievable family drama what started at the party ended with tears and secrets no one expected. I'd been looking forward to our parents' 25th wedding anniversary for weeks. Mom had spent days baking, Dad had picked out his best suit, and the backyard was decorated with string lights and balloons. Everyone was supposed to be in high spirits. Everyone except Nathan, my 19-year-old cousin. Nathan had always had a way of turning things about him into his own stage. At first, I brushed it off. He was young, a little dramatic, but this time, it felt different. From the moment he arrived, there was this smirk on his face like he knew something no one else did. "Hey, why does Mom look so tired? Did she even sleep last night?" he whispered loudly to me while Dad was setting up the barbecue. I shrugged, but I felt my stomach gnaw. It wasn't the first time he'd made snide comments about Mom's appearance or Dad's cooking, and everyone laughed awkwardly, unsure if they should take it seriously. At dessert, the tension had already started to build. Mom brought out the chocolate cake she'd made the night before, and Nathan rolled his eyes. "Well, did you make this all by yourself? Or did someone help, because it doesn't look like your usual work?" Everyone chuckled, but I noticed Mom's smile faltering. Then came the subtle manipulations. Nathan cornered my younger sister, Emily, in the kitchen. I overheard him whispering, "You know Dad probably regrets some of his choices, right? Mom isn't as happy as she pretends." Emily's face went pale, and I could tell she didn't know how to respond. I wanted to step in, but he had this magnetic control over the conversation, making her doubt everything she knew. By the time Dad tried to make a toast, Nathan had already turned half the guests suspicious. He raised his glass and said something casual, but it hit like a hammer. He is to 25 years, though I wonder if all of you actually know what's happened behind the scenes. Some chuckled nervously, others looked around at each other, confused. I pulled Nathan aside, my voice shaking. "Dude, seriously, this is our parents' night. Can you just stop?" He smirked and leaned close, whispering, "Relax, I'm just telling the truth. People can't handle it. That's their problem." I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't just joking around anymore. Nathan was turning our celebration into a minefield, and no one was safe from his words. I tried to ignore it and focus on Mom and Dad, but every time I glanced at Nathan, he was lurking in the shadows, whispering, smirking, waiting to pounce on someone's emotions. The night was still young, and I had a sinking feeling it wasn't going to end well. By the time dinner was halfway done, the air in the backyard felt heavy, like someone had quietly sucked the happiness out of the room. Nathan was sitting across from me, his plate barely touched, but he was watching everyone with that same calculating smirk. Every laugh, every compliment, every small gesture he twisted into something tense. Emily was still rattled from their earlier conversation. She kept glancing toward Dad, then Mom, clearly unsure if she should say anything. Nathan leaned in again. "You know, it's weird how Dad always puts on a show for Mom, makes you wonder if he's really satisfied, you know?" Emily shook her head, but I saw the doubt creeping in. Mom tried to brush it off with a laugh, but it was strained. "Nathan, honey, could you pass the salad?" she said, clearly trying to steer him back into normalcy. Nathan did, but in the most condescending way possible. He let the bowl linger just a little too long before sliding it across the table, eyes darting to make sure everyone saw. I couldn't take it anymore. I leaned toward Dad during a lulling conversation. "Is he always like this?" I whispered. Dad sighed, rubbing his temple. "He's young, but yeah, sometimes it's exhausting. Just try to ride it out." Ride it out. This was more than exhausting. Nathan was dismantling the mood piece by piece. Then came the moment that made my blood run cold. Nathan suddenly stood up during a toast. "I just want to say something," he announced, voice carrying across the yard. Everyone quieted, the string lights casting long shadows. "I think it's brave to celebrate 25 years, but let's not pretend everything's perfect. Sometimes people hide a lot behind smiles, and if you don't think so, well, maybe you're just lying to yourself." A few relatives laughed nervously, unsure whether he was joking or serious. Mom's smile completely vanished. Dad's face hardened, but he stayed seated. I felt my hands clench. This wasn't just commentary anymore. Nathan was actively trying to pit people against each other, make them question their own family. I tried to cut in. "Nathan, that's enough. Stop messing with everyone's heads." My voice cracked with frustration, but he ignored me, like he'd been waiting for this exact reaction. He scanned the crowd, smirk widening. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking but won't admit. Don't act so shocked. It's just honesty." The worst part, people weren't sure who to side with. Emily looked horrified. Cousin Mark, usually protective of the family, whispered to my aunt, "Does he have a point, though?" That tiny suggestion sent another ripple of doubt through the group. I felt trapped. Every glance Nathan threw my way was like a challenge. "Try to stop me if you can." And the more I tried, the more I realized how poisonous his words had become. This wasn't a kid being annoying. This was emotional sabotage. By dessert, I knew one thing for certain. Tonight would either end in disaster or in confrontation. I just didn't know which side of the table I'd have to fight from. By the time dessert was served, the backyard had gone from festive to tense. Mom was quietly wiping her eyes, trying not to cry, while Dad kept adjusting his tie like he could somehow fix the night by fidgeting. Nathan, of course, was grinning like a cat who'd knocked over the milk, completely aware of the chaos he'd stirred. He picked up his fork and leaned back, scanning the group like a general surveying the battlefield. Then, as if on cue, he dropped the bomb. "You know, I've been thinking anniversaries are nice, but they can hide a lot. People pretend everything's perfect, but maybe some of us are just too polite to say anything." My cousin Mark, sitting beside Dad, frowned. "Nathan, that's enough. Can you stop trying to ruin the night?" Nathan chuckled lightly. "Ruin? I'm just pointing out what everyone already knows deep down. You can't handle honesty." His tone wasn't angry, it was playful, but there was poison beneath it, and it dripped into everyone's ears. Emily, tears welling in her eyes, suddenly blurted, "Nathan, why do you always have to make everything so weird? Why can't you just let people celebrate?" Nathan leaned toward her, voice dropping into a mock whisper. "I'm just being real, Em. Maybe if people weren't so blind, they'd see what I see." That was it. Something snapped inside me. I slammed my hands on the table, drawing everyone's attention. "Nathan, stop manipulating everyone. This is Mom and Dad's night, not your personal playground." For a moment, there was silence. Even the cicadas in the backyard seemed to pause. Nathan's smirk faltered slightly, replaced by a glimmer of surprise. "Wow, okay, angry much, I'm just being honest," he said, almost too calm. Dad finally stood towering over the table. "Nathan, I've had enough of this. You think being clever with words makes you wise. You're only hurting people. If you can't celebrate with respect, maybe it's time you leave. Mom's voice joined, trembling but firm. Please, Nathan, stop this. I don't want to cry at my own anniversary. I've worked hard for this family, and you're turning it upside down. Nathan leaned back, crossing his arms. You're all so sensitive. Can't take a little truth without acting like the world is ending. Cousin Mark finally spoke up, standing beside me. Truth doesn't need to be cruel. You're choosing to manipulate everyone. Nathan, that's not honesty. It's toxic, and we're done letting you get away with it. For the first time that night, Nathan seemed unsettled. He looked around, realizing the smiles and nervous laughter were gone. Eyes were fixed on him, silently judging, calling him out without words. I felt my heart pounding. I'd been trying to protect everyone from him all night, but seeing Dad and Mom finally confront him made me realize we weren't alone. The weight of his manipulations had been heavy, but this was our moment to push back. Nathan's smirk wavered, and for the first time, I saw the kid behind the mask arrogant, scared, and cornered. I knew this confrontation wouldn't erase everything, but at least the family was standing together. Nathan's eyes darted around the backyard, calculating, like he was deciding which target to strike next. The tension was electric. For a moment, I thought he might storm off, but instead, he leaned forward, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Fine, he said, smirking again. If you all want to act like I'm the bad guy, let's see how far that goes. I felt my stomach twist. Something about the way he said it wasn't just offensive, it was almost thrilling to him, like he was about to start a game with real consequences. I mean, come on, Nathan continued. Mom, don't you ever get tired of pretending Dad's perfect, and Dad, don't you get bored of Mom acting like nothing's wrong? I just say what people are thinking, that's it. Mom's hand shook as she clutched her napkin. Nathan, stop, you're making things worse, you're not helping anyone. But Nathan wasn't done. He stood up fully, pacing between the tables, every movement deliberate. Why should I? You all live in this bubble, this fantasy, and I'm just here to pop it. Honestly, I think it's pathetic how everyone pretends to be happy while ignoring reality. Guests shifted uncomfortably. My little cousin Sophie started crying softly, hiding behind my aunt's chair. Emily's face was pale, tears streaming. I wanted to grab Nathan, shake some sense into him, but I knew he twisted into another moment of guilt for me. Dad finally took a deep breath, trying to keep control. Nathan, enough. This isn't honesty. This is emotional abuse. You're manipulating everyone's feelings, and it stops now, or you leave. Nathan froze, staring at Dad like he hadn't expected that kind of authority. He laughed nervously, but it wasn't convincing. Manipulation, that's strong. I'm just saying what's real. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. No, you're not saying what's real. You're twisting everything to make yourself the center, to make everyone feel bad so you feel smart. This isn't truth, it's toxic. And it's hurting Mom, Dad, and all of us. You've gone too far. The backyard was silent, the string lights flickering softly above, illuminating the mixture of anger, fear, and exhaustion on everyone's faces. Nathan looked around, finally realizing he wasn't in control anymore. No smirks, no whispers, just the weight of our unified stare. He shifted uncomfortably, looking for an escape. You're all overreacting. I'm done listening. Mom interrupted, voice firm for the first time all night. You're leaving, now. Nathan's face flushed red, a mix of embarrassment and frustration. He grabbed his jacket, muttered something about overreacting, and stormed off the backyard, slamming the gate behind him. The silence after he left was heavy. No one spoke at first. Then Emily sobbed quietly, Mom hugged her, and Dad sank into his chair, letting out a shaky sigh. I slumped down too, feeling exhausted but relieved. For the first time all night, we could breathe. Nathan's words, manipulations, and toxic energy were gone, at least for now. And even though the celebration had been ruined, our family's bond felt stronger than ever for standing up together. The night felt strangely quiet after Nathan left. The string lights that had once made the backyard look magical now cast long shadows, reflecting the emotional toll his word had taken. Mom sat at the head of the table, hugging Emily tightly, while Dad ran his hands over his face like he was trying to erase the tension that had built up over the evening. I stayed close to Mom, feeling guilty that I hadn't stepped in sooner, but also relieved we'd finally drawn a line. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry, I murmured, my voice trembling. I should have stopped him earlier. Mom shook her head, brushing a tear away. It's not your fault. Nathan has always had a way. Tonight was on him, not you. Cousin Mark, who had been quietly observing from the other side of the table, spoke up. You handled it really well, by the way. Confronting him wasn't easy. He thrives on making people feel small. I nodded, still replaying Nathan's smirk in my head. He had this uncanny ability to twist words and manipulate emotions. It wasn't just annoying teenage behavior, it was dangerous in its own way. I realized how much it had affected not just me, but the entire family. Mom finally stood and moved toward the decorations, straightening a fallen string of lights. You know what, let's not let him ruin this night. We've still got cake, and we've still got each other. That's what matters. I offered to help her, and together we brought the remaining cake back to the table. The family started to share quiet laughs again, tentative at first, like testing the waters. Dad even cracked a joke about his burnt barbecue, and we all chuckled, the tension easing slightly. Emily wiped her tears and leaned on my shoulder. I hate him, she whispered. Why does he always have to ruin everything? I held her hand gently. I know, but the important thing is that we stood up to him. He didn't break us. He can't, not when we're together. Cousin Mark nodded. Exactly. Nathan might try to manipulate again, but now we know how to call him out. We don't have to take it silently. For the rest of the evening, we focused on the little things, sharing stories, reminiscing about old times, and even dancing awkwardly to some classic hits Dad put on the speaker. Nathan's absence was a strange kind of relief. The backyard felt lighter, warmer, like a weight had been lifted. By the time the night ended, I realized something important. Toxic behavior might hurt us temporarily, but family unity and standing up for each other was stronger. Nathan had tried to control our emotions, but we refused to give him that power. As we cleaned up, Mom hugged all of us. Thank you for standing together tonight. It wasn't easy, but we made it through, and that's what matters. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what manipulations Nathan tried in the future, we had learned an invaluable lesson. Honesty is one thing, but cruelty disguised as truth is something we would never tolerate again. The next morning, the backyard looked almost peaceful, like the night's drama had been a bad dream. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, and the leftover decorations swayed gently in the breeze. But the tension from last night still lingered in our hearts, a quiet reminder of Nathan's emotional storm. Dad sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, staring at nothing. I can't believe how far he pushed it last night, he muttered. His hands were clenched around the mug, knuckles white. Mom joined him, sliding in beside him. He's 19, I know that, but he has this knack for emotional manipulation. It's exhausting. I poured myself a cup of tea, trying to process everything. Nathan had crossed the line, but seeing Dad and Mom confront him had been empowering. I realized how important it was to set boundaries, even with family. Emily wandered in, still tired and pale. Do you think he'll come back tonight? She asked quietly, anxiety still lingering in her voice. I don't know, I said honestly. But if he does, we have each other. He can't manipulate us when we all stand together. Cousin Mark called later that morning to check on us. How's everyone holding up? He asked. I could hear the concern in his voice. We're okay, I replied. A little shaken, but better than yesterday. Nathan really pushed his luck. It was scary, but we finally confronted him as a family. Mark sighed. Good, honestly. I was worried he'd tear the family apart, but seeing you all stand up to him, I think it made him realize we're not easy targets anymore. By afternoon, a sense of relief started to settle in. Mom decided to take a walk around the neighborhood with Emily and Sophie, trying to clear her head and rebuild the joy that had been stolen the night before. Dad stayed behind, fixing a few broken decorations and quietly talking to me about Nathan's behavior. You know, he said, Nathan isn't just being rebellious, he's trying to control people emotionally. It's something we'll have to address carefully, but last night was a turning point. We showed him the consequences of his action. I nodded, understanding. Nathan might test boundaries again, but now the family knew how to respond. Last night had been a lesson in standing up to manipulation, recognizing toxic patterns, and protecting each other's emotional well-being. By evening, the house felt warmer, filled with small laughs and the smell of freshly baked cookies Mom had made to lift everyone's spirits. Even though the anniversary celebration hadn't gone as planned, we had something far more important, the reassurance that our family, united, could withstand toxic behavior even from someone as close as Nathan. I realized that while Nathan's manipulation had shaken us, it also reminded us why family matters. The love, trust, and boundaries we share are stronger than any smirk or whispered insult. And even if he tried again, we'd be ready. A week later, the anniversary celebration felt like a distant memory, but its lessons were still fresh. Nathan hadn't come around, and the silence from him was strangely comforting. For the first time in a long time, the family could breathe without the tension of his presence lingering in every conversation. Mom was back to her cheerful self, cooking dinner while humming softly. She looked at me and smiled, exhaustion still faint in her eyes but tinged with relief. I think we finally got through to him at least a little, she said. Dad, sitting at the table with a notebook in front of him, nodded. He knows now that emotional manipulation isn't acceptable, but more importantly, we've proven that as a family, we wouldn't let him get away with it. Emily, still cautious, joined us in the kitchen. Do you think he'll ever really understand what he did? She asked quietly. I sighed. Nathan was smart, but prideful. Understanding the damage he caused would take time, and maybe he'd need to see it himself through the eyes of others. Cousin Mark stopped by that evening. So how's everyone holding up? He asked, carrying a small bouquet of flowers for Mom. I've been thinking about last week and honestly, you all handled it better than I could have expected. Mom took the flowers smiling. Thank you, Mark. It means a lot that you stood with us, but support made all the difference. For the first time, we talked openly about Nathan's behavior without fear. We discussed boundaries, how to respond if he tried to manipulate again, and how to support each other emotionally. The conversation, though serious, felt like a release away to reclaim the joy Nathan had tried to steal. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat with Dad on the porch. The air was cool, and the stars reflected the calm we had regained. It's strange, I said. I thought this anniversary would just be a celebration. Instead, it became a lesson in family resilience. Dad chuckled softly. Life throws challenges at us in unexpected ways. Nathan's behavior was difficult, but it reminded us what's important: standing together, protecting each other, and not letting toxicity take root. I nodded, feeling a sense of closure. Nathan might return one day, and his words could sting, but the bond we had strengthened that night wasn't easily broken. We had faced manipulation, confrontation, and emotional turmoil, and we survived as a family. Mom called from the kitchen, desserts ready, and I think we all deserve a treat after last week. Laughter followed, light and genuine, filling the house. Even Emily smiled, and Sophie ran around the table, completely at ease. In the end, Nathan's toxic behavior didn't destroy our celebration, it taught us a crucial lesson. Honesty is important, but cruelty disguised as truth is something we will never tolerate. And as long as we continue to communicate, support, and stand up for each other, no manipulation can take that away. Our parents' anniversary, though chaotic, became a story of resilience, courage, and love. Nathan tried to control the night, but the family prevailed. And that, more than any cake or decorations, made the celebration unforgettable.